Now we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love.
Hey, good morning, Whitewater. You guys awake? Or are you just hot? I feel like when people are going like this when I'm preaching, it means I'm doing a good job. So I kind of like hot days. It makes me feel like I'm doing well. Man, it's really good to see you all here. Thank you for your support. For those of you who don't know, last week Sarah and I were gone. Sarah's dad had a stroke. He actually had 3 strokes, and so we had to drive down to Sacramento to be with him and her family, and he's stabilized. He's not doing quite as well as we would hope and what we would like, but he is stabilized right now. And so we really appreciate your prayers. We appreciate your support. I couldn't imagine doing life and going through these things without the community that we have. So thank you. And if you would just keep Stan Nemi in your prayers, we would. That would be a big thing to us. So again, thank you guys. Love this community. Let me say a word of prayer and we'll get started. Heavenly Father, we love you so much. We're so grateful to be able to gather here, Lord, on this beautiful Northwest warm day. Would you speak truth into our hearts and into our lives? Lord, would you remove the burdens off of people who are carrying burdens that are too heavy for them to carry, that they need to drop? And would you, Lord, would you help us to do what you've designed us to do, what you have called us to do with our lives. Help us to love. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're in this series called Us for Them. You saw that, the new video, it tripped some people out. People were like, that was crazy awesome. There are a few people who were like, I was a little scared of that. But the film really depicts in a very abstract way the reality that we live in a world that is often divided by lines, or people draw lines to divide us against them, an us against them mentality. And Jesus, in the book of Mark, really addresses that issue in the world, a world that the ethnicity lines that often become us versus them, or political lines, us versus them. It could be family lines, that's me versus him, or me versus her. It can be in work. It can be it's all over the place. We live in an us against them culture. And Jesus addresses this in the most radical and challenging ways you could imagine. If you're a Christ follower, there's something about Jesus where he doesn't fit in any category just right. How many of you guys know that Jesus doesn't fit in our category sometimes? He challenges us, he changes us. And in this story in chapter 10, if you have a Bible, you can turn there. If not, it's going to be on the screen behind you, and then we have notes for you in the program. If you want to follow along the scripture, there's notes. Scripture's on one side, the notes are on the other. I would encourage you to follow along with that. But Jesus doesn't fit in the categories that we think of for him, and he also redefines categories of life and love. And so we're going to look at this story. Let's jump in right into this story. And here it is. We're going to be in Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 35. It says, "Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came over and spoke to him," being Jesus. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do us a favor." How many of you guys have ever wanted God to do you a little favor? Would you just do me a little favor, God, this one thing? How many of you, it's turned into more than just one thing? Like you're like, and then there's this other, and then there's this. Well, these guys are walking with Jesus, and they're like, "Man, Jesus, we haven't asked for a lot, and we see you heal people. You cast a demon out of that guy yesterday, and it was crazy. I mean, he was flipping and flopping, and you just stopped it. That was an unbelievable thing. You fed 4,000 people. We've seen all these things, and we've never asked for one thing, and we just want to ask for one thing right now." Now, notice that it's just these two brothers, James and John, also known as the sons of thunder. And it's not because they like, thunder and lightning. It's because they're thunderous personalities. They like to clash with people. And they have this secret meeting with Jesus. So Jesus doesn't say, oh yeah, I'll grant your request. He says, what is your request? He's a wise man. How many fathers in here of daughters or sons know that when your son or daughter comes and say, hey, I have a request for you, you first say, what is the request? How many of you guys know that? There's a few of you. A few of you haven't learned that yet, but you will. Hopefully not painfully. They replied, this is what they want. When you sit on your glorious throne, we want to sit in the place of honor next to you. On your right, one on your right and the other on your left. That's interesting, right? One on your right, one on your left. In this culture, just like ours, it was a culture of lines and us against them. So the brothers, the sons of thunder, are really asking, can we be number one? Because they believe Jesus is going to come bring freedom from the Romans, freedom from the religious elite and corrupt. He's going to kick them out with war, and he's going to be the ruler, and he's coming in. So if you're with a conquering ruler, a conquering warrior, where is it best to be? On his right and on his left. That meant that you were in a place of position and power. You were like number one. You were like one of the leaders. You had greatness in you because of your closeness to the leader. And in this culture, the ones with power were the ones with military might, with strength, with the finances, with the numbers. They have the numbers to back them up. The ones who were great, the ones who were in control, stayed in control by keeping the ones who weren't, keeping them out of control, keeping them down. So it was a top-down culture. There were people at the top, there were people at the bottom. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you, but the ones who were great kept it by keeping their power. So they're saying, Jesus, can we be great? Can we be number one with you? And just for your information, these two brothers, James and John, they had other encounters with Jesus. One of them is really interesting. I think it sheds a little light on this. But they were traveling with Jesus, and Jesus was going through a country called Samaria, which was like the sworn enemies of Jewish people back in that day. And he had sent disciples out to kind of prepare his way and prepare homes and prepare the villages for him to come. And the villages rejected the disciples. They said, we don't want Jesus. Go back. We don't want him here. And James and John, being the calm guys they were, like, Jesus, can we go have a little discussion with these guys? No, that's not what happens. How many of you guys know what happens? They're like, Jesus, can we call down thunder on that village? And that village, we want to call down some thunder. They're drawing some lines, right? Because it's us against them. They've clearly defined themselves on the outside. Because when you draw a line, it defines on who's on the inside and who's on the outside, who's in and who's out. And those Samaritan villages are on the out, and so we got to burn them with some heaven fire. Now, I'm sure none of you guys have ever had any feelings like that. Not like you drive on the I-5 or 167 and someone cuts you off and you're like, oh, just a little bit of fire, whoosh, right there. Have you guys ever wanted that? Maybe I'm the only one. Just like not to hurt anybody, just to remind them of the power of of your follower who follows you, God. I want a little bit of fire, or someone, maybe someone in your family's acting out and they're acting ugly and you're just like, Lord, bring some fire. Let's draw some lines. They're on the outs with this. I'm right. I have the right to be right because I'm on your side. That's what James and John, that was how they thought. But Jesus said to them, you don't know what you are asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I'm about to drink? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism of suffering I am to be baptized with? And then verse 39, they say, oh yes, they replied, we are able. Isn't that so human? Like, yeah, we're able. We can keep the ones in line that need to be kept in line. We can keep the Pharisees and the Romans. We'll push them down to the bottom of the heap, and we'll stay at the top of the heap. We can handle that, Jesus. Just give us some of that holy fire power that you've got. Just let us have that ability. We can do it. But they're missing what Jesus is saying. They think they're so capable. Then Jesus told them, you will need to drink from my bitter cup and be baptized with my baptism of suffering. But I have no right to say who will sit on my left or my right or my left. God has prepared those places for the one and the ones he has chosen. When the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant. See, if you haven't read through the whole book of Mark, which I'd really encourage you to do, maybe sometime this month, just read through the book. I think it'll raise a lot of questions. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, non-Christian, someone who's been in church a long time. Read through the book of Mark. Check it out. And you'll know that this has been a controversy between all the disciples. Not only are they seeing Jesus against the Romans and Jesus against the religious elites, it's like us against them within their own little tribe. Like the disciples have been vying for being number one. The disciples are mad. They're indignant. Like, how dare you try to one up us? How dare you have a secret little meeting and try to push your agenda of being first? We should be first. One of us should be. It's not fair, Jesus. And so they're trying to bicker over who's the greatest and who should be the greatest. You don't often think about that when you think of the disciples of Jesus, do you? That they could be that petty? And I don't like to think of myself as someone that could be that petty, but I think there's a reality there. It's kind of funny. This us against them, this lines in and out, it starts at a young age. As if on pastoral cue this morning, my daughter did this fun. I just got to tell you, she likes to sleep latched onto someone. And so early in the morning, she'll come into our room sometimes. And this morning she did that. She came into and she latched onto Sarah's arms. Sarah's family are they're no touchy. They stay away. I need my space. Too hot. But Novella will not be denied, so she'll latch on and then she'll get pushed away and she'll latch onto the head. Any of you guys had kids like this? She was latching on like this and just And my wife was like, no. And I came in, I was like, oh, my two gals. And I came and I hugged them both and I said, I love you, Sarah. I love you, Novella. And Novella looks up at me and she goes, I love you, Daddy. And then Sarah goes, I love you, George. And Novella went like this. She loves me, Daddy. She loves me. And I was like, Novella, but she loves me. And she's like, she loves me. And I said, yeah, but she just loves me a little bit. And she's like, no, Mama doesn't love you. It starts so young, doesn't it? Like who's the greatest? Who should have the love? Who should get the approval? Who should be number one? It starts young. But in verse 41 it says, when the 10 other disciples heard this, they were upset, they were indignant. So Jesus called them all together and he said, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over other people and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your, what? Servant. Let's say that again. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Isn't it easy to forget that greatness has been redefined by Christ? And greatness is becoming a servant. Greatness is actually becoming low. It's this total reversal of everything that we think is right. Interesting, isn't it? The question for me goes back to this reality where they say, hey, we're ready to be on your right and your left. What does it mean to be on Jesus' right and his left? Because he says, look, I'm not going to appoint that. God has another plan for who's going to be on my right and my left. And I don't think you guys qualify right now. If we jumped ahead to Mark 15, it says this in verse 25. It says this about the crucifixion where Jesus dies on the cross. It gives us the insight into what it means to follow Jesus on his right and his left. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. A sign announced the charge against him. It read, the King of the Jews. 2 revolutionaries were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Isn't that interesting? See, this is helping it become clear what Jesus meant for the disciples who were seeing things really fuzzy. They were seeing everything kind of blurry. They weren't really getting it. And when Jesus dies on the cross, there's 2 people on either side of him, and they're dying on the cross in shame. And Jesus is saying, he's making clear to us with his life that those who would be great must sacrifice and be with him. And notice it goes into even more detail about what it means to follow Jesus. The leading priests and teachers of the religious law also mocked Jesus. They were his enemies, and they had won. Like, we're the winners. We're on top, Jesus. You're at the bottom. He saved others, they scoffed, but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross so we can see it and believe him. Even the men who were crucified with Jesus, the ones on his right and his left, were ridiculing him. Jesus was on the cross facing his enemies as they mocked him and scoffed at him and made fun of him. The very ones he was dying for, his enemies. And does Jesus have the power in this moment to call down some heaven fire? Does he have the power to call down some armies? Does he have the power to eviscerate and defeat his enemies who are mocking him? If he's truly the Son of God, he does. But he doesn't do that. But the other thing is, there's this reality that he also doesn't back away from dying for them. He doesn't back away from the truth. He doesn't back away from confronting them on the cross. In the moment where Jesus is least known to his enemies, like he's least known as Lord, he looks like he's a fraud. He looks like he's a loser, a cosmic loser, and they're victorious. In the moment that he is least known, his true power is shown. His love for the world. And we have to see beyond what our world says is powerful and weak, what is good and what is bad. We have to look at the cross and look at Christ as he's dying for his enemies, not afraid to stand up for the truth of God. I'm going to need a few volunteers just to help illustrate something. I think there's something very powerful we could miss in this passage. But I need someone who's kind of like buff and slightly ripped. Do we have anybody who's buff and slightly ripped? No, come on. Can I get a volunteer? Someone who's at least a little bit bigger than me. A dude. Let's get a dude up here. Is there any dude who could help me? Anybody who's not a... Oh, someone's volunteering you. Do you want to come up here? You're not volunteering. I need a volunteer, guys. This doesn't work. All right, Jason, come on up. Jason, come on up. This is perfect. I'm going to step down here. Now, Jason's pretty beastly. He works with cars. And could you guys give him a hand as he comes up? Thanks. So I'm going to ask, trust fall real quick. Turn around. No, I'm just kidding. So if you guys were to say, hey, if they got in a wrestling match, who would win? It's fairly obvious, correct?
Ruth.
Yeah, don't mess with her. Yeah. I'm pretty sure your family would beat our family in a wrestling match. Probably mainly because of Connor, but your son. But what I want you to do is this. Could you put your hands up like that? What I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you push me back, with some strength. Don't murder me, don't hurt me, but push me back. But it's really key before we do this that you stop when I say stop. Very key that you do that. Okay. All right, you got that? All right. So let's do this. Okay. Before you push, we were right here. This is the reality of a lot of the world. It's us against them. Yeah? Us against them. The one in power, the strong one, is pushing against maybe a little bit weaker one. So go ahead and push me back. Is that all? Wait, you can push back harder. There we go. Okay, stop. Stop. That's some power. You got some girth there. I like that. So, oh man, that's more challenging than the last guy in the early service. He was weak. Sorry, TJ, if you see this later. So the reality is that many of us, when we're pushed on, when someone has a different perspective than us, it's us against them. There can be kind of they push us around, just like you did. Do that again. Push us around. Now push a little bit less hard and let me push you back as if I could. So I'll.
We're pretending.
You were pretending right now.
Okay.
Thank you so much. My self-esteem is so much better right now. But if I'm pushing you back, when someone pushes you, you want to push them back, right? That's a lot of times let's get them off. I don't agree with you. I don't want this. I don't want you to push this into my life. Sometimes even physically, get away from me, right? And we can push on someone else. But the reality is if someone's bigger and stronger than you, what will happen? Go ahead. And stop! There we go. Give him a hand. That was really good. We're not done. Give him a hand. That's pretty powerful. Here's the point. This could seem kind of silly, but this is really, really key. We can be pushed around. And here's the thing with our faith, We live in a world that has so many lines, and it's like us versus them. There's all sorts of stuff, political lines that are going on these days, and people get really passionate about it. Just look at Facebook, right? Twitter, anything on the internet. Go to a family reunion, and there's that guy in your family who's, I'm talking about Trump or talking about Hillary, talking about Bernie, talking about the independents or whatever, and they're super passionate. And there can be, depending on your perspective, you're just like, would you just shut it? And then after a while, like there could be, how many of you guys have clashes like that? Like boom, all of a sudden you start pushing back. And it causes pain and frustration, and a line is drawn. And some people just get pushed around. Christians we're not called to just be pushed around. That we're called to stand for something. But here is the issue. In our world, it's either get pushed around or push back. But what happens, if you put your hands up there, what do I look like when I push back? Who do I look like? See, I mirror the one who is pushing on me. So when someone lies to me, I'm like, you know what? And it's okay for me to lie to them. I become what I hate. Don't miss this. If we go like the way of the world, I write that tweet back at that person who wrote that Facebook thing, and you're just like, oh, they're just waiting for someone to hit them because they're so wrong, and boom, we hit them, and it feels good for the moment, and then we've put it out there on the interweb for eternity. Well, until eternity comes, it's out there forever, and we push back. What do we look like in those moments when there's no love? We look like them. What do we look like when if someone's experiencing bullying, and so someone becomes a bully to get the bully off of them? Well, they've become what they hate. In the inner cities, what happens when someone's struggling with gang issues in their area, and it's a young man, and he's gonna get caught up in this and hurt if he doesn't join another gang. That's what happens, and so we become the thing that we hate when we just push back. Now, all right, I want you to push really good on this one. All right, there's something that the Lord teaches. It's kind of, well, this isn't the Lord. This is just a side note. This is what happens with like guerrilla warfare or like terrorism, is when I'm small and I can't do anything about it, they go like this, right? That's terrorism. That's dirty. It's no good. That's no good either, right? We can agree? Now, I want you to push hard on me. 1, 2, 3. Do you see that move? That was Christian judo right there. I was a little scared. Give Jason a hand. Thank you so much, man. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you, man. There we go. I'm up. I think even though that can seem kind of almost like silly, at that illustration that there's a reality that the cross was Jesus neither destroying his enemies, because if he had, he would have become the sin that they were. And he couldn't be weak, and he couldn't stand for nothing, get pushed around, so he stood for love. See, love moves us from us against them, where we become just like the oppressor. We become, the liar that lied to us. We become the rageaholic, like the rageaholic that affected us. And there's these family patterns that happen. But we break the chain, and we're able to live in love and truth when we let love move us from us against them to us for them. And we embrace them rather than disgrace them. And when we can speak that kind of truth, when we can take that kind of stand with love, it changes things. Because then, like greatness, Jesus redefines greatness. Greatness isn't loving power. Greatness isn't loving your greatness. Greatness isn't just loving your superior moral standards. Greatness becomes allowing love to become your power. Are you with me? True greatness, Jesus on the cross, dying for the ones mocking him, hating him, his enemies, was allowing his love to be power. That's true power, friends. And we can't see it. We miss it all the time because we react. We're so habitually trained that we just react half the time. If someone says something mean, we say something mean back. If someone pushes on us, we push back. Someone lies, we lie. If someone hurts us, we hurt. If someone won't forgive us in our family, in our friend circles, then we won't forgive them, and we push back rather than the way of God's love and finding a way to embrace with love and truth to reveal who they have become and who you are, your humanity. Because whenever someone's pushing you down, they're taking away some of your humanity. Do you want to become like them and take away their humanity? That is not what God designed. The cross is a totally different way. If we were to stand on his right and his left, we're not going to take the way that John and James think. It's totally wrong. Now let me ask you guys a question. Well, actually, let me read you this scripture. I think this is really important. Matthew 5 says this. Matthew 5:43 says, "You have heard the law say, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you." If you only love those who love you, what reward is there in that? Even the corrupt tax collectors and sinners do that. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even the pagans do that. Even the pagans do that. We want to draw these lines, right? But in the church of God, in the community of God, where Jesus was taking outsiders and turning them into insiders, he was changing the us against them and us afraid of them into this us for them mentality. Jesus was loving and changing and transforming his enemies. And if that's true about his community, then who do we leave out? I mean, who do we draw a line and say, you can't come in? Who do we leave out? Do we leave out Trump supporters? Do we leave out Hillary supporters? Do we leave out Bernie supporters? I mean, are you feeling the burn right now? I'm not advocating any political persuasion here. I'm advocating, I guess, the politic of love, the reality of God's love, and our posture towards those who think differently than us. Who do we say are out? Certain people with an ethnicity we're unused to, people who are very different than us, people who have hurt us, are they out? They can't come in? In our church, do we draw lines and say, hey, you can't be in here? You can't experience God's love? And I know there are realities where you have to put, like where if someone is abused and you're in an abusive relationship, you have to get out and you have to put up some boundaries. But that isn't saying that they are separated from the love of God. Are you with me? Does this make sense? So let me ask you, who is your enemy? We don't talk in terms of enemies in our culture. You don't hear people say, oh yeah, there's my business enemy, there's my professor enemy, there's my school enemy. Maybe some of you guys do. Remember Seinfeld? Jerry always had Newman. He'd be like, Newman! And he was like his mortal nemesis. But we don't talk in those terms these days. What I think gets to the heart of it is asking this question: who do you disagree with? Who do you dislike? Who is very different than you? Because those that are different, those that we disagree, and those that we dislike, we will often say it's us against them. And we will lose the mentality of the cross that says it's us for them. Jesus died for this person. It doesn't mean I have to agree with them. It doesn't mean I have to agree with everything they do, with everything they say. See, in our culture, in the Christian culture, we think that if we accept somebody, that means that we agree with them. Or if we're in close proximity with someone who's a sinner and they have obvious issues and they're addicted, or they've got rage and they've got all this stuff, if I'm in close proximity, then that equals permission. And I got to tell you this, if you look at the life of Christ, if you look at the reality that God came to earth with sinners to die for a sinning, broken world, that means that acceptance of people does not mean agreement. That proximity with sinners and outsiders does not equal permission. Does that make sense? And we get to become the people who love those who are different, who love those who we disagree, who love those who we even dislike. You don't have to always like somebody. I was talking with my friend last night. You don't always have to like somebody to love somebody. But when you love somebody and you commit to them, over time you might just like them. It might take an eternity, but at some point you'll like them. I had a pastor share this with me. I thought it was really profound, and it illustrates the lines that we draw. How many of you guys relate to what I'm talking about? How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? You're with me. Good. He said, he in his church, they had to make a decision. There had been an abortion clinic nearby. And he's from a church, and he believes in Jesus. He believes we're all made in the image of God, and abortion destroys people, like babies. And the church and their community were completely against that. And totally pro-life. I'm pro-life. I'll tell you why in a little bit, but he was like, it was such a hard thing, and they were so used to people coming with signs, yelling at women as they came in, you're a baby murderer. You like, God hates you. And this is like the message they got as people were coming in. And you can see like why there's a line drawn there. This is a big issue. And he was like, it was a really big issue, but I decided to do something different. I didn't agree with it, didn't like it, hated it. It's totally contrary to my convictions and belief in God and what the Bible teaches about life, the sanctity of life. He's like, and I decided to approach it differently. And I actually went and set up a meeting with the leaders of the abortion clinic. He walked into the abortion clinic as a pastor, said, hey, I'd like to talk with your leaders. And they're like, who are you? And he's like, I'm from the church down the street. And they're like, whoa, we don't think we can get a meeting with you. He's like, I already called them, and so they said it was okay. I'd go talk to him. And he met with them, and he said, hey, I want you to know this. Although we completely disagree on this, I want to help people, and I want to love these girls that are coming out of your clinic that are needing counseling and they're needing love. And he's like, and secretly, I want to share the love of Jesus with them if they don't know. Because there is hurt, there is pain, there is brokenness that they didn't even know that they were going to have after they walk out of that clinic. And couples that are struggling, and couples that are even struggle with breaking up after, we want to counsel them. We'll be there for them. We're for these people. We're not for this issue. We love these people. We're not for this issue. We love these people. And rather than screaming at them and yelling at them and how much their separation, and that separation, how huge that is, it was saying, we love you. And he let them know, hey, if there's any unwanted children, we will take them. We'll find somebody to take any unwanted children. I want you guys to know that. And I don't know about you, but like just the idea, the issue of abortion, that is polarizing. I said that word in here and people kind of sat up. Because, it gets to the core of who we are, right? And what we believe, what we've been through. And my grandpa, his mother, my great-grandma, drove to an abortion clinic and almost aborted him, but she couldn't get out of the car. If she had, I would not be here. And the people my grandpa's impacted, my dad's impacted, the people I get to serve, none of that would have happened. And so, it's deep for me. But I want to be the kind of church that can look a gal who comes out of a situation like that, look her in the eyes and accept her and love her and be in close proximity and find a way for our community to bless someone who I totally and utterly disagree with the action that I don't like, that it emotionally destroys me thinking about how many lives are taken every year with this. But I want to be a part of a church that we can look at someone who, anybody else, it would seem like they're enemies, and say, I love you. And there's a reality, there's people here today that have had abortions. There are women that have gone through this. And there's guilt and shame, or there's anger and there's hurt. And I just want to remind you that at the foot of the cross, you're forgiven. Foot of the cross, you are loved. You are received. And I want to be a part of a church that gets that. That's who we are. Jesus said this. You know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over them. Everyone's power hungry. Everyone wants to be number one. Everyone's drawing lines. Everyone's us against them, or us afraid of them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and give his life as a ransom. We are to love. We are to take the way of the cross. Whom do you disagree? To whom do you dislike? whom is different, who you called to love. It doesn't mean you'll like them all the time. It doesn't mean you agree with them at all. But how do we love? How would that change our Facebook posts and our Twitter posts? How would it change our conversations at work? How would it change like our conversations about that person? How would it change our posture from a posture that looks like this to a posture that embraces who they are? Maybe not what they've done or what they believe. Are you with me? Imagine what a community, a Whitewater, would look like if we became known as that kind of people, that kind of community. I think we bless people all the time. That's what our community does. But the more and more we understand that we are servants. We're not trying to be the great ones. We're trying to be the low ones. We're serving people. And that defines your greatness. Greatness is not loving power. Greatness is letting love become your power. Amen? When we got down to California, we got to the hospital and walked into the room. You hear all the beeping and the smell of like all the chemicals they use, keep things clean, and all the medications. I just looked at Stan. He's just 6 foot. He says he's 6'3", but like he's Scandinavian. They're always super modest, so he's actually 6'4" or 5". He's huge. Can't even fit on the bed. His legs are draped over it. And here's this man that I've known who's like one of the most capable, one of the most active, one of the most servant-oriented guys. He's helped us with our house. He's helped tons of people over his lifetime. And I walk in the room and I see him, these long Scandinavian legs just draped over, and he can't move half his body. He can't walk anymore. And then when we start talking with him, he can get out yes and no and some other words, but he's struggling speaking. The mouth that I talked to, the man that I knew, he's changed. He's still there. It's still Stan, but his capacities have diminished. His life is, we think that it could be a really long, difficult road, or it could be a really short, difficult road for Stan. And none of us knew that was going to happen. None of us were like, hey, that he's 62, like he's close to getting a stroke. It just happened. And when I was studying this, it just really struck me. The same man that used those legs to walk all over New Guinea as a missionary, through jungles to share and serve people that most of the world don't care about at all, that are at the bottom of the world's heap. He went to this country in New Guinea and risked his life multiple times, almost died multiple times, walked miles and miles in the jungle on these legs. It's the same legs in front of me that can't walk anywhere. That man was a servant. The same mouth that can barely speak in front of me in that room was the same mouth that served and loved and spoke encouragement and shared the gospel with people of New Guinea, with people of Sacramento, with people, anybody he would meet. Stan wasn't perfect, but he was a servant. I don't know about you. I don't know how much time I have on this planet. I don't know how much time is given to me to live. But when people think about me, if people go to my funeral, when people remember me, I want them to remember that George was a servant. That George helped people. If somebody needed something, he helped them. If someone was alone and they felt abandoned, that he was there for them, that he didn't just walk by them. And I'm not perfect, but I want to be a servant, guys. What do you want for your life? How are people going to remember you? We don't know how much time is given to us. So let's be great. And that's the beauty about being great. Anybody can be great because anybody can serve. Amen? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we love you. We're so thankful for you. Lord, would you just give us the hearts of servants? Lord, in this series, God, as we go through the book of Mark, would you teach us what it looks like on a week-by-week basis? Lord, would we find people to serve this week? Lord, would we be asking the question, Lord, who do you want me to serve today? Would you begin changing our lives and help us to be great? Not in the eyes of the world, not trying to draw lines, not trying to be us against them, but it's us for them. It's us loving them. It's us letting love become the power in our life. Help us to forgive. Help us to be generous. Help us to be listeners. Help us to see people. We pray all these things, Jesus, in your name. Amen.